What's good, YouTube? It's your boy jsoulll in the building. jsoulllerific back in the building. Oh, so soulerific, and you already know what it is. It's been a long time. Missed you guys. Happy New Year to everybody that's watching the video. Shoot, what are we gonna get into today? We got a pretty interesting conversation for you guys. We're going to be talking about singleness and if it's biblical. Like, what is biblical singleness? I don't even want to waste no time. I just want to jump straight into it. And take a real look at singleness, not from our perspective, our opinion. We'll talk about that, but I really want to look at what God has to say about it, and how he would define it, and just see what he says, see what the word says. All right, cool. So, all right, I recently was invited to speak at a panel, and it was an amazing experience. It was on singleness. It was for single people, and I am well, just so you guys understand where I'm coming from, I am single, in the sense that I'm not physically or naturally married or in a relationship with somebody. I am by myself. Now, when I was in communion with God and we were talking, I was like, oh Lord, he just started to speak to me, and I was like, Lord, I can't really remember, I can't recall not one time in your ministry where you spoke about or taught people how to be single. If anything, the main emphasis was on reconciliation. It was on being joined. It was on marriage more so. It was then how to be single, or how to, micromanage your single urges, or how to manage the physical, urges you're experiencing in the flesh. And I think, in the church, I think the church has incorporated or adopted the discussion on the topic of singleness, and tried to wrap Christianity around that. And I think the church and people have incorporated what their human experience, or what they're experiencing in the flesh, and trying to figure out how they can manage that until they get married to somebody where they can express themselves, or that part of themselves, that sensual part of themselves, in now a relationship in a manner that's wholly unto God. So it's like your urges and your feelings and your the things that you want to express in the flesh are sinful until you're married. Then they're holy. And so now if you're not married, you still have the same urges, and you're just like this burning ball of fire, this burning ball of passion. And I think the church has tried to, I think the church believes that, and because the church believes that, we are trying to help people manage their sexuality rather than, and their passions rather than putting it off, right? And how that looks. And that's what I want us to discuss right now. Singleness, let's look at it like in regards to how the world sees it, how the world describes it. Singleness is you literally being alone. You go to dinner by yourself. It's like, nah. But it's not a plague, it's not a virus, and it's not a disease to be single. But basically all it means in short is that you're just not in a relationship, right? You're not married, you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And unfortunately in our society, whatever else you want to be joined with, right? Now in the Bible, really just think about this for a second. Can you guys think of passage in the Bible where it specifically talks about singleness? Now I know there's a lot of, like, the Bible doesn't talk about football, right? But because this is a thing that is a common topic in the church, and it's something that is brought, it's a reoccurring topic, is something that I want us to address and focus on a little bit. Does the Bible speak about singleness and give specific instructions about it? Or does the Bible only give specific instructions as it pertains to marriage and relationship and reconciliation and how to treat your neighbor and your union with Christ, right? Now, this is what I want to say. I'm speaking specifically. Let me now make some clear statements here. I'm speaking specifically to believers. Unbelievers, you are very much welcome. My beloved saints and ain'ts, as Jackie Hill Perry says. But my ain'ts, you are more than welcome to sit in and listen to this video. I think it'll still be constructive and beneficial to you. But I wanna take a moment to address my believers. My saints, biblically, I do not believe that any Christian is single, whether you're married or not. Even when you were not married or not in a relationship, you were never single. You know, this singularity complex is this idea that you are by yourself till you are joined to another, where you can express yourself completely. And usually what we're talking about is sex. And if not, and not just that, but that's always a part of it. And also to the emotional, I guess, completeness, in a sense where now you get to do life with someone. They get to understand you on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level. And when you're not in a relationship, you can't express those things. Now that's a very that's partly true. And I want to bring us actually to Genesis, and it is for that very reason why God said it is not good for man to be alone. Basically, it is not good for man to be single or all one. It's not good for man to be all in one, because how can humanity express itself amongst itself or with itself? And marriage, if we truly understand it, it is the mystery of the Trinity. It is how you understand the Trinity, and how they're one but separate, or how they're one but each different, right? Each God but not three, one. And it's because love in and of itself is completely and totally sufficient, right? Love, completely, totally sufficient. It needs nothing outside of itself. It is not in need. So but as a result of that, because love is completely and totally self-sufficient, love in and of itself gives. All it can do is give. And because any true virtue cannot, there's no virtue that can be without an expression, in the sense that anything that is alive, it has an expression. It expresses itself. So love is alive, and because it's alive, it expresses itself, and love multiplies. So there are certain functions of love, like there's a certain functionality, right? If we were talking about what is the characteristic of love, or the dynamic, how does love work? Love expresses itself, one. So love is not quiet, or it's not unexpressive, and love is and love multiplies. And within And within love, what happens is that love creates community by which it can express itself to others, or give itself to others. And you want to create from that place. That's why when God created Adam and Eve, he said multiply. So sex wasn't created just to satisfy a desire in the flesh. It was created as a means of celebrating oneness, and then a means by which man could multiply the image of God on the earth out of love. You understand what I'm saying? Out of this, I'm fully satisfied and complete in relationship to the Father. And as a result of that, I see you, my Eve, my Adam, created in the image and likeness of God, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And because I see you exactly the way you were the way God sees you, there's such an honor and a love and a joy that compels me, that draws me towards you. And from that place, this vertical revelation of who you are to God, there's this horizontal expression of that knowing here vertically. And what happens is that there's consummation, right? And there's a joining. You're already joined super in the spirit, but there's this physical a theatric there's this physical play of sex, right, where you have now this physical expression that symbolizes a spiritual reality, that you are one. And what happens is that life and love always multiply, right? So when two come together in the physical act of consummation, and they become one, they join together, and two become one, what happens is that something is born out of that, because everything that is born of love, right, is after its own kind. So that was the intention of God, right, from the very beginning, for there to be a multiplication of his image, of his spirit in man, right, out of love. So because you could look at the Trinity as a marriage, for all my people who got the iPhone 11, right, you got 3 cameras in that square, right? And each one has a different function. This is like all total spirit. And one is the wide lens, one is your regular, and then the other one is whatever it does, right? Now, wide, ultra wide, and then I think just regular. Now, but they're all a camera, right? They're all one camera, but 3 in the way that they function. So if they were just one, how would one be able to express itself with the other? It'd be one, all humanity all wrapped in one vessel, right? And that's what Adam was. And God said, no, let me present to Adam, or let me present to man to himself in another form. Let me say that again. Let me present man to himself in another form. Still man, but in another form, right? So same spirit, another form. And that female form, now that's why Adam looks at Eve and says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. The minute he looked at her, he knew exactly who she was. He knew where she came from, and he had this knowledge that came from God. There was this revelation that it was plain. It was the most sure thing when he looked at Eve and said, yo, you shall be called woman, because you were taken out of my womb, out of my side. And there's this pure, complete, honest confession of who she is, and revelation of her creation, of her being, and of her heritage, and the way he identifies her, and the way that he speaks about her, and to the status that he elevates her to, is so profound and is so pure, and it's completely God. And And what you see is a pure expression of marriage. God did not create any human being to be single. That's why God said it's not good for man to be alone. It is not good for man to be single. It is not good for man to be all in one. What God wanted to do was to make one in two, so that two could be a better one, or could interact with one another, so that way what would happen is that they would experience unity, but in diverse persons, so unity of spirit in diverse persons. That's powerful. I'm preaching good. So you have this expression of oneness, and what happened is that the enemy saw that pure equation that God had created and what it would do if it ran. So he had to interrupt it immediately. And that's what Satan comes to do. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but he comes to pervert in the beginning of something, so that way you change the narrative. If I can get you if I could get you from the jump, if I could get you while you're still developing, if I can get you before things pop off, if I can catch you before you see truly your capacity and who you were intended to be, and the purpose and the power that you had from the beginning, if I can get you to miss that, then what you become used to and what becomes normal is what is unnormal becomes normal, and what is normal becomes something that you have no idea of. So what ends up happening, that's in essence what ended up happening. He said, if imagine even just for 100 years, if Adam and Eve never ate of the fruit, the type of establishment that would have, even let's not even 100, even just a year of and I really don't know how long they were in the garden until they ate the fruit. I have no idea, but let's just say that they were in the garden 100 years. Let's say they didn't eat the fruit for another 100, and they had Cain and Abel, right? And then all of the offspring that came out of there, nobody there, that's whole narrative with Cain and Abel would have been different. You understand what I'm saying? And both of wow, it's if you follow that, you can just go that way and start to see how much different the dynamic, the interaction between man would have been had Adam and Eve not eaten the fruit. And the interaction between husband and wife, nobody would have came into no man would have looked at a woman, or no woman would have looked at a man and abused the other. There would have been no rights. There would have been nothing but love, and every man would have looked at a woman and said, hey, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And there would have, singleness wouldn't even exist. There's no, because in and of itself, singleness, if you really think about it, it breaks down here, because anything that has life cannot live if it's not connected to a source, right? And a flower, the minute you pluck it out of the ground and you don't put it in water or in dirt or in the earth, it begins to wither immediately. You kill a cow, or whatever. You take raw meat and you don't preserve it, it rots, but it's rotting either way. You take a human being and you don't give him food, you see what I'm saying, or water for just 3 days, that man is already struggling. A day for some of us, half a day, an hour for some of us. So no one, there is life in and of itself. It needs life. No one is self-sufficient. No one can live on their own. Nothing that has life is completely and totally self-sufficient and self-reliant. It doesn't exist. So human beings are no different. And human beings, God created man with his spirit. So man was never single. And even if you are not married, you're not in the physical, you're not single, you are still married. Now people love to, and people think, oh, that's just poetic, that's just, you know, that's just beautiful language, like, yo, like, okay, yeah, cliche, of course, that's redundant, yeah, we're all married to Christ. But no, there's no but. See, that we exalt our human experience, and we exalt the things that we experience in the natural more than we grow in the revelation of what has truly taken place in the supernatural. And because we fail to do that, because we don't grow in that revelation of our union to Christ, what ends up happening is that what we go through and what we see is more real. And then if we still believe in God, we're incorporating him. So we're trying to figure out how we can incorporate Christ into what we are, into what is God unto us. And that is what we see, and that is what we are going through, and that is what we are experiencing in the flesh. And God, now you need to help me manage my urges, instead of, wait, no, God, this is not Christ incorporated, is Christ my life, right? And more so transformation, and a putting off and a recognizing that the old man is dead, right? That's a whole nother thing. But singleness, right? For the believer, you're not single. That's basically what I'm trying to say. You're not single. You're married. You're married to Christ. You're his bride. And what does that mean? You know, and I'm gonna do another video where I think I really like go into deeper detail about what it means to be the bride of Christ, what that looks like, just to arouse your curiosity, and inspire people to want to know the Father more, because there's joy in relationship with Christ. Christianity isn't micromanaging your character. It's not you know attitude or character regulation. It's life transformation. You know, and you're just not single. And so you need to understand that you are married, and whether you are naturally married, and this is what you got to understand, your desire for marriage this way, horizontally, is supposed to come from the revelation of your horizontal union to the Father. Marriage on earth doesn't make sense if it's not anchored in unity or relationship, oneness with Jesus. You have to understand that God, that what we get to experience and express is a result of what of realities in the spirit. You understand? See, Christ wants to be intimate, and this is for my saints and you know, my ain'ts. God wants to be intimate with you. And God, when he came on earth and he became a man and he dwelt among us, he took on the likeness of sinful flesh, and he came not to condemn the world, but that through him the world might have life, right? To reconcile the world unto himself, you know, to bring, in the sense that man, man, after he ate the fruit, after Adam ate the fruit, was divorced. There was a divorce that took place, where man separated himself from the Lord as a result of his disobedience. And for God so loved his bride that not that he lost, but that left him, that he gave his only begotten son, made him and the word became flesh and dwelt among us, that Christ, or the living word, might run after his bride to remarry her, right? And he had to die in order that his bride would be legally free to get out of her relationship or her covenant with Satan. And so that she would now be able to remarry Jesus. And that's what happened. You know, if you look at the Bible, it's very biblical. Jesus said that to every saint, for every person that traverses, that converges from you know, any person that goes from being a saint, a sinner to a saint, what happens is that you now immediately are given the ministry of reconciliation. God said that it is given to all of us that believe the ministry of reconciliation. What does that mean? The ministry of bringing together, because to reconcile implies that it was joined at one point and something happened that broke that apart. So we were married, we were in union with Christ, and there was and the expression between man and woman was a result of his union to Christ, right, where it was pure, and something happened, sin happened, and as a result of that there was a tearing, there was a separating, and that's why we spiritually died, right? Because we were no longer connected to life, we were now connected to death, and we were married to it, and we became joined to it, but there's no life in death. So that's why man became single. So man went from married to now single, and as a result, that is a regression. And in that state now, man is single, he is in need, he is in want, you know, even so there's no love towards his spouse. Even if he marries, is at some level at her expense. And even if there is actual affection and desire for her, it is not in its purest form how God intended for man to interact with woman from the beginning. It's skewed and it's warped. Sorry. So God comes to remarry his bride, or to give his bride the ability to get remarried to him. And when we grow in the revelation of that, you recognize that, Christ is my life. I mean, think about it. Look at it like this. When you become a believer, when you become a saint, what happens? Christ now comes in, like, there's intercourse that happens. And now, I know that's going to freak some of you guys out. You're like, God, intercourse with man. This is what we need to understand. A lot of these words have been perverted. By society, by media, and in the natural. But intercourse is a very spiritual and beautiful thing. It's a very God thing. And I'm going to show you why. Now, intercourse in the natural, what is it? It's when a man enters into a woman, right? And if that's like a virgin, let's say two virgins. Now, a woman has a hymen. That's a seal. You know, it's a thin, I guess, layer of skin. Don't be too hard on me in the comments. But anyway, and when that's torn or when that's broken, blood is spilt, right? Now that's very spiritual. And we've reduced it into, did you pop her cherry? Did you, this? Did you do that? Did you take her virginity? And it's a prize. But from in the beginning, that's how God created, the female vessel. And when intercourse happens, a man goes into, he enters into, inside of her, for real, that's what it is. And that wall, that thin lining is broken, and then blood is spilled. And now these two people know each other in a intimate, a physical way, right? And he's, and he very much physically has come into her, right? And now they're one. What does that sound like to you guys, right? When you got saved, Christ changed your body, made you a virgin, made you a clean dwelling where he could now come and dwell in, right? And his spirit intercoursed or entered into you. And Holy Spirit now, and that for those of you that have received the baptism of the Holy Spirit know what I'm talking about. You're a vessel that's been made clean. You are now a virgin, right? Holy, blameless, no wrinkle, no. That's how, when you look at, when we talk about a virgin, we talk about a woman that's innocent. You know, some of the terms that we use to describe a virgin is innocent. You know, for most people would say naive because they haven't been brandished by the world, but innocent, right? Now, so now Christ, how does Christ describe the church? No spot, no wrinkle, no zit, without blame, above reproach, meaning above shame, above condemnation, like you are above it. You cannot be put to shame, nor can you be condemned or judged. You are above reproach. And that's a vessel that Christ comes in, enters into, and there's intercourse, and in that place you are no longer your own. You give up your life, and as a result you get his, and he has already given up his life for us. So there's this exchange, and what happens is that your life is now hidden Christ. That's also Bible, right? That our lives are hidden in the Lord, right? So what ends up happening, or what now is the reality, is that you and Christ are one, and there is no distinction nor separation in how God sees Jesus and in how God sees you. The way God sees Jesus, he sees you exactly the same. My goodness. Now you tell me if that is your reality, and if that is true biblically. You tell me how you are single. You may not naturally be married to another person in the flesh. Oh, but spiritually, if God could open your eyes just for but 2 seconds to see what he did, what happened when you got saved, and what the reality is presently if you are a believer, I promise you, you'd walk different. Or you at least you would at least be aroused enough to want to pursue and dig deeper into that truth. It's just the reality of what it is. No one that is a believer is single. But for my ain'ts, if you ain't married in the natural, you single. And then even if you are married, both you and your spouse are single. You may be one in the supernatural sense, but you, that one, are still single because you're apart from the Father, you know, and you're in a sense single together with somebody else, you know. And then you think about it, that's really why people get into relationships, because they're both single. You know, they're single, they don't have relationship, you know what I'm saying? They want it, they crave it because they need it, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are things that, these are innate human needs, and they're needs because we've been disconnected, you know. But a believer isn't supposed to be in need of that, you know, because you have it. You see what I'm saying? That's why for a believer to be in need, or for a believer to be single, doesn't make sense, because you're supposed to have a relationship with Christ. Now this is what you have to understand. You know, Christ has given unto man, you know, people that he can love, you know, or she, wherewith he can express the vertical revelation horizontally. So, you know, now I'm not saying that that means like you know you could just sit in your room and never leave the house and you'll be totally and completely satisfied. You're not operating in love. See, love interacts, love expresses itself. It's the very first thing I said in the beginning of this video. So I don't want anyone getting in the comments to be like, well, but you know, no one can be alone by themselves. You're not alone. You know what I'm saying? You're in relationship with Christ, and there are people that Christ has put around you that you can love. At the end of the day, you do not need people. God did not create Eve because Adam had an erection. He wasn't just walking around the garden and like, hey, I don't know what to do with this, Lord. And God was like, you're right, Eve. No, he didn't. And no, right? That's something like a really amazing pastor by the name of Dan Mahler. That's a situation that he brought up, so it's not me. But God didn't create Eve as a result of like Adam's lack or whatever, or need in the flesh. No, he created her out of the fullness of man. So or of God in man. That's better. So and sexuality or sex drive is something that we inherited from man. It's actually a single thing. When man was married, he did it. His desire to have sex wasn't because of a drive that kicked in randomly at just sporadic moments throughout the day. And hey, wife, no. Sex again was a celebration and was a result of a revelation of man's unity and oneness with God. That's the consequence with sex. We've reduced it to urge, a feeling in a moment, one night stands, etc., etc. So you have to understand the difference. Now, what did we inherit as a result of man's sin? I call the nature of Adam. God said that man was after Adam, and God referred to himself as the second Adam. So you can live as a Christian and you can be a Christian and still live according to the nature of the first Adam. And then what you'll be doing is trying to now like regulate and do relationship with God, but it just won't work. Or you can recognize that the second Adam, everything about him is different. His definitions are different. The way that he does life is different. And that's what it means to be born again, to do life all over again, and to unlearn, to learn anew, to renew your mind according to who you were from the beginning. And that's why the word is so important, because when you see the word, you see God. And every time you look at the word, the old man, the familiarity to who you used to be is dying, and you're being renewed in the fashion, you're being renewed in the knowledge of the truth of God's word. So again, no Christian is single. And you have to understand, that's something that has to be understood, right? So I think I've touched on everything that needs to be touched on in this video. And I think in my next video, I'll go more into detail in regards of what it means to be the bride of Christ, and how we can grow in that revelation, and just become better married people, right? And this is what I'll say to those that aren't in a relationship naturally, or married. The degree, your marriage, your relationship with people, the health of it, is directly proportionate to your revelation and interaction with God, right? Or to the degree that you have relationship with the Father is to the degree that your relationships romantically will thrive, because relationship this way is supposed to be a result of expression of the intimacy I'm having with God vertically. That's my desire to even want to interact with you, to even want to love you, to love a woman is supposed to come from the love relationship I have with God, So if it's not that, it's need driven. There's some void that I cannot satiate myself, and I need another in order to and by another person that can complete me or enable me to express what I cannot express myself, or what I cannot satisfy myself. So I am, if I am single, if I am by myself, and and my relationship or my desire to want to get into a relationship is not out of the fullness of what I'm experiencing with God, it's something else. I'm alone at night, and I would prefer to be held. And as a result of that, if you don't want to say that you're lonely in your need, you say, well, I just got a lot of love to give. From my people I just got a lot of love to give. No, you just got a lot of need. And you're calling it love. So you get into a relationship, you're doing all of the things, you're calling the person all the time, you're checking up on them, you're thinking about them day and night, and that's a result of need. That in and of itself exposes tremendous need, because there's such a desire to want to express this way, but that's only because you're not experiencing that sort of expression this way, and if you were really expressing and that desire was being satisfied this way, then it wouldn't be your relationship and your desire, your interaction and your want for a relationship with another person horizontally in the natural would change completely. So that's something that I want to leave with you guys. I pray that this has kind of brought some revelation, some insight, some understanding, some instruction, some clarity to all of you guys on the chat. God bless you. May God keep you. May He shine on you and be good to you, for He is good. And in my next video, I'll talk about what it means to be the bride of Christ. I'll talk about more in detail about marriage. If you guys have any questions, please comment down below. Be sure to rate, like the video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, if the Holy Spirit leads you to, and I will see you guys and gals in the next video, I guess. So stay tuned. We going in. It's 2020, baby.